I'm going to begin by saying this. The world is a very dangerous place. A very dangerous place. The country of Iran, as an example, is responsible for a bloody proxy war against Saudi Arabia and Yemen, trying to destabilize Iraq's fragile attempt at democracy. Supporting the terror group Hezbollah in Lebanon, propping up dictator Bashar Assad in Syria, who has killed millions of his own citizens, and much more.
Millions.
Of course, I'm reading now from Trump's written comments, basically saying we're not going to do anything about Saudi Arabia killing Jamal Khashoggi.
I, for one, am stunned.
I can't believe it.
This.
I can't believe it, man.
I mean,
that's insane.
What is this world coming to, where the United States looks the other way when its proxies murder journalists with impunity? I mean, that's not who we are, folks.
He does not mention American values even once, and I think it would be worthwhile to go through the entire statement because it is interesting, and I think, once again, the reactions to it are interesting. So Trump says, likewise, the Iranians have killed many Americans and other innocent people throughout the Middle East. Iran states openly and with great force, death to America and death to Israel. Iran is considered the world's leading sponsor of terror, quote unquote. On the other hand, Saudi Arabia would gladly withdraw from Yemen if the Iranians would agree to leave. They would immediately provide desperately needed humanitarian assistance. Additionally, Saudi Arabia has agreed to spend billions of dollars in leading the fight against radical Islamic terrorism. Just as a side note, isn't it great to have a president who says those words?
Yeah.
Finally.
It's why there's no more Islamic terrorism, because he said it.
After my heavily negotiated trip to Saudi Arabia last year, the kingdom agreed to spend and invest $450 billion in the United States.
Wow.
That is a record amount of money.
Woohoo!
That's literally that's the highest number everyone's ever considered. $450 billion is the new highest number.
Our money real good right now.
If you can name a number higher than that, I'd like to hear it.
Good luck.
Like to hear it.
Fake news.
I'd like to see Iran name a number bigger than
Can't do it.
$450 billion.
They can't even count to 6 million over there.
It will create hundreds of thousands of jobs, tremendous economic development, and much additional wealth for the United States. He goes on to talk about how much will be spent on purchasing military equipment from Boeing, Lockheed Martin, and Raytheon, and other great U.S. defense contractors.
For that war in Yemen that they really want to end any day now.
And he says that, look, if Boeing, Lockheed Martin, and Raytheon didn't spend all this, didn't sell, take all their money, then surely the Russians and Chinese would. Now, he says,
strong point.
The crime against Jamal Khashoggi was a terrible one, and one that our country does not condone. Indeed, we have taken strong action against those already known to have participated in the murder. After great independent research, we know now many details of this horrible crime. We have already sanctioned 17 Saudis known to have been involved in the murder of Mr. Khashoggi and the disposal of his body. Representatives of Saudi Arabia say that Jamal Khashoggi was, quote, an enemy of the state and a member of the Muslim Brotherhood. But my decision is in no way based on that. This is an unacceptable and horrible crime. King Salman and the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman vigorously deny any knowledge of the planning of or execution or of the murder of Mr. Khashoggi. Our intelligence agencies continue to assess all information, but it could very well be that the Crown Prince had knowledge of this tragic event. Maybe he did, and maybe he didn't.
Maybe Khashoggi just slipped on a large olive oil puddle and broke his neck open. We don't know.
I mean, the literal thing is, the excuse is my cousin told me Jamal Khashoggi was a pro fighter and he actually tried to jump all of us. That was the initial one, which is that's undefeated.
Yeah,
that's brilliant. That's fucking amazing. That is so beautiful.
Well, what he's going for here is sort of like Schrodinger's cat, but instead of a cat in the box, it's the dismembered body parts of an enemy of the state who's also a journalist and American resident.
Khashoggi's limbless torso.
He says, that being said, we may never know all the facts surrounding the murder of Mr. Jamal Khashoggi. In any case, our relationship with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, they have been a great ally in our important fight against Iran. The United States intends to remain a steadfast partner of Saudi Arabia to ensure the interests of our country, Israel, and all other partners in the region. It is our paramount goal to fully eliminate the threat of terrorism throughout the world. Blah, blah, blah. He goes on to say, I understand there are members of Congress who, for political or other reasons, would like to go in a different direction and are free to do so. I will consider whatever ideas are presented me, but only if they are consistent with the absolute security and safety of America. After the United States, Saudi Arabia is the largest oil-producing nation in the world. They have worked closely with us and have been very responsive to my requests to keeping oil prices at reasonable levels. So important for the world. As President of the United States,
So important.
I intend to ensure that in a very dangerous world, America is pursuing its national interests and vigorously contesting countries that wish to do us harm. Very simply, it is called America First. Okay. Now, despite the fact that basically every single thing he said about the war in Yemen is wholly untrue and incorrect, and the shit about how Saudi Arabia is going to invest all this money in America is also largely fictitious.
Look,
Everyone is in full dipe mode about this because they're like, let's be clear. He has literally just said, the President of the United States and the U.S. government literally don't give a shit at all about this journalist being tortured and murdered by one of our close allies. They can do it because, let's be honest, their money spends and they need their oil and the war against Iran.
yeah,
right?
Well, they've been the fucking West's point person for oil and fucking strategic shit since they fucking backed the Sauds over the Hashemites after World War One. It's like it's they're the linchpin of the entire like Atlantic strategy in the Middle East. Some fucking fat Saudi David Brooks getting like the Pulp Fiction treatment isn't going to change that.
Now, everyone in the sort of DC foreign policy consensus is horrified by this because they're like, never before has a president, basically fully condoned the murder of an American resident or journalist, leaving aside the fact that they definitely have.
Well, I mean, they do it, but they don't say
exactly.
it.
Right.
And we can all laugh at like the way, the effects of tertiary syphilis on his brain that produce the inimitable language and phrases that we all have come to know and love from our president. But let me be clear again. There is absolutely nothing in this statement that is at odds with the bipartisan DC foreign policy consensus on Iran and Saudi Arabia, nor is there anything in this statement that is fundamentally at odds with the quote-unquote values of the American state.
No.
In fact, it is possibly one of the most honest expressions of our foreign policy. And the thing is, like, this is what foreign policy people, like the people who write for like The Economist or The Atlantic or, or work at Brookings or AEI or who teach, at Georgetown or Harvard or whatever, foreign policy or international relations. This is what they all tell themselves, but they don't pitch it to the punters.
No.
And what they're pissed off at is saying the quiet part loud.
And it honestly comes down to, because I don't think you can even make an argument, just a realpolitik argument. Oh, no, if you tell the people the truth, they're going to be horrified by it and rebel. No, they're as distracted and depoliticized as ever. What it really just means is it might actually cost some of these assholes their jobs after a certain amount of time, because their entire profession is laundering the brutal realpolitik of American foreign policy through the language of human rights and horseshit. And if the U.S. government just decides, because it's led by, Uncle Gropey, that why bother with that? Oh, you told me this is why we're doing it? I'm just going to tell the people that that's why we're doing it. I'm not going to leave it to you guys to launder this. Then why do you have a job? What is your point? Well, we don't need to be told the lies anymore, because we've gotten to just the hyper normalized point where it doesn't matter.
But I need to stress,
people shit on one of the Johns from the John podcast for being a hypocrite for talking about this. When his literal job was to write flowery versions of this for Obama, when Obama would more or less defend the same sorts of things, not as, because everything was normal under Obama and before the rise of Saudi Jared. They never killed one of these guys as friends. But yes, John 3343 is being a hypocrite in the sense that all these people are being a hypocrite, but he is, it's like a lighthouse keeper defending his profession in an age of automation and AI. It's sort of cute. Trump just going out here and saying we do great deals with him is so naked, and it's why would you need these speechwriters? Why would you need fucking any of these guys? If you really like to, I know everyone loves to share a smile around the Thanksgiving table. Try to look at everyone from anything associated with Center for American Progress, Think Progress people writing about this, because Dinar, who does pretty much the same shit, he just foot the bill there, and the Saudis, and Everyone in D.C. is just living off the float on the interest rates of the bank accounts of every Gulf state. It's fucking hilarious.
And
it's hilarious. It's hilarious. All these people who just could not be bothered to talk about any of this shit under Obama. It's suddenly they sound like Cindy Sheehan. Suddenly they sound like fucking Medea Benjamin the second that they can point it at someone else. And it's going to go away. Nothing's going to happen. Nothing.
No, of course not.
Absolutely fucking. Here's the one thing I think will happen. I think that Mohammed bin Salman has about 2 years left to live. I think I wish this was a Vegas sports book.
Yeah.
I think they're going to knock him off, and it's not really going to fucking change anything over there. But he's a little too nutty. He's a little too unpredictable. He's a little too fucking stupid for the John Brennans of the world. He is a legitimate fucking dope. He's a moron.
I just like how because the Washington, I think, intelligence community is sort of at the point where and they remember the CIA did leak their estimation that he was responsible, and I think that's part of a realization that we have let this band of inbred dipshits run things. And it's been okay because it's really a turnkey operation. I mean, the oil's right there. But at a certain point, you get too few chromosomes or whatever, and it's no longer viable. And you need to find somebody with their eyes a little bit farther apart in the family tree to take over. So, yeah, he personally might have fucked himself with this. But the Saudi relationship is going to be it can't go anywhere because there's no alternative to it, because Iran is the regional enemy. They are the point person in that battle. And to talk about the stuff that happened under Obama, the Yemen war started under Obama. The cracking down on the Bahraini independence and pro-democracy movement happened under Obama. They executed Nimr al-Nimr under Obama. There's nothing that the Saudis could do to change the fundamental math of it. And what libs are trying to do, in addition to being horrified by Trump's naked just stating of reality, is to say, oh, he's being bought by them. Oh, they're going to build him a casino in Mecca or something, or they're gonna buy more of his.
They're going to buy Jared's building.
They're going to buy Jared's building. And
they're dumb enough to buy it thinking it's a good investment.
Yeah, they'll be like, the margin on this are going to be pretty amazing.
This is a steal.
Yeah. But, I mean, that might make some difference on the margins. It honestly might be the difference between them deciding to off Khashoggi and not. But that's like one thing. Like, that is a real, I mean, honestly, in the ledger of Saudi crimes and American crimes, it's pretty fucking low on the list. And it might have been something that MBS felt he could do because of his relationship with Jared, which is, corrupt. But the idea that any of this is at a fundamental base necessitated by just this mere crooked relationship, that's just classic liberal attempts to pathologize just the structure of power into personal corruption.
And here's the other thing. We were talking about how they all turn into Code Pink as soon as the other guy does it. But even any of these Democratic foreign policy types or journalists or whatever, if you press them, and I've seen this happen a million times on a moral question, like the moral dimensions of the foreign policies they've supported, they will always turn into Trump immediately, and their first response is always, sorry, Buttercup, the world isn't as simple as good and evil and right and wrong. We're dealing with real interests and power here.
Hans Zimmer, Why So Serious, starts playing, the world is a dangerous place.
Exactly. And do you think that any of these people want to cut off Saudi Arabia or Israel? Nope.
I mean, you know what? It's like we always say, how far would you go to make sure your shitty kids don't have to work? And these is a lot of people with a lot of shitty kids who they really don't want to have. Those kids can't start a podcast. They don't have the brain power, IQ, charisma to do it. So they gotta, they gotta do this so their kids can work for Brookings.
I want to read a little bit from the New York Times editorial board talking about this today. And they write here, ignoring the findings of the CIA, Mr. Trump said in a muddled statement released by the White House that, in effect, no matter how wrong the murder of the journalist Jamal Khashoggi, no matter where the true responsibility lay, he would not stand up to the Saudi regime. President Trump confirmed the harshest caricatures drawn by America's most cynical critics on Tuesday when he portrayed its central objectives in the world as panting after money and narrow self-interest. Well, good day to be a cynic. Glad that everything that we already believe was true is once again proven to be true. And then what I love about this is that another thing they're doing is like he's ignoring the CIA. He's going against the CIA. He's heedlessly ignoring their wise counsel, telling him. I mean, this is the CIA. They invented fucking executing journalists and torturing them to death.
Indeed.
Like, this is what the CIA exists to do,
They
is go after money and America's narrow self-interest.
They were just trying to party with them, and if certain people fell out of an apartment building, it can hardly be called murderers.
Yeah, it's not like they had a literal school for all of the thugs and monsters of all of our client regimes where they taught them how to torture people.
They had a little sort of like employee of the year wall. That's if you were just creepily showed up at the most executions, you got on it. Frank Carlucci, Ted Sheckley, all the stars.
Dan Mitrione.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We talked about the assassination of Orlando later on this show when he was blown up by Pinochet
in the middle of
the fucking
He did what Tony Montana couldn't do.
and killed his American assistant. The United States looked the other way, and people pointed that out to some of these libs, and the response is yes, but they never put a thing saying that it's okay that they never basically admitted he did it. The U.S. never said, yeah, Pinochet probably did it, but he's our ally. And that means that the fundamental relationship between this regime that did this terror attack in our capital, that's somehow different than our relationship with Saudi Arabia, because we used couch language to avoid addressing the issue and just talked about, well, we think it might be these other guys. Like, actually, they say that it's superior. It was a better thing. It was more moral to lie about it.
Yeah.
Than to tell the truth.
Well, they don't want to know. They don't really want to know.
No.
One more. This is Aaron Blake of the Washington, a senior political reporter for the Washington Post. He writes here, imagine being tortured and dismembered and then having the president of the country.
I can't imagine that, because then I'd be dead. Yeah. Imagine yourself floating over your limbless torso with wings and a harp.
No, he says, once you take that leap of imagination, that you're imagining and witnessing this shit after you've been
Imagine
tortured.
it's a dome from Marilyn Monroe.
It's a living.
So imagine being tortured and dismembered.
Okay.
And then having the president
Got it.
And then having the president of the country that is supposed to hold your killers accountable. By the way, Trump isn't president of Saudi Arabia.
No, they're not supposed to do that.
Exactly.
Literally not.
Is where it happened.
Imagine having the president of the country that is supposed to hold your killers accountable instead repeat their smears against you while he gives them a pass. That's just what happened. And again, like, look, I'm sure I'm not discounting his genuine revulsion and fear of this. And the other thing that actually is horrifying about Trump's statement is he's like, Saudi Arabia just said he was an enemy of the state. And what he's really implying there is like, I should be allowed to declare journalists enemy of the state and kill them.
I mean, he's got it.
He wants. I mean, that's what he would want to do.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
And
that would be. It would be. It's darkly fun. It's portends horribly that this completely mentally degenerating man, like you see like a little kindling go off in the rotten forest of his brain, and he thinks he can do this. But it is kind of funny that the first guy he probably think of is like Graydon Carter.
Yeah.
That's like the dissident.
He sends a
You finally lose, Graydon.
He sends a CIA wet work team out. Bring me the head of Anna Wintour.
Yeah. Think how funny that would be if you're a fucking CIA psycho who just you believe you're the Praetorian Guard of America. You've given up everything, so you just have this ability to just murder at will, and you're like, why am I killing the editor of Cosmo? Like, why am I killing the Page 6 editor? What the fuck?
You're waiting with garrote wire in the back seat of Little John's car to strangle him because he said that Trump was bad on The Apprentice.
Killing Arnold for ruining The Apprentice. So cool.
But like, as far as Aaron Blake goes, like anyone within the DC blob, be it journalism or foreign policy or whatever, who's outraged by this. I'm sure they do feel, some of them at least, some genuine outrage over this, but like they can choke on it, in my opinion, because the way they're talking about it, again, it's like this is the first time this has ever happened. Reagan literally said the Contras were the moral equivalent to the founding fathers.
Indeed, he
and
did.
in a sense, he was right. But I mean, they were literally
Yeah.
carrying out a dirty war against civilians that involved rape, torture, and genocide
Yep.
on a national scale. That's just one country in Central America.
Yep.
We can
El
go.
Salvador.
We can go down the list.
American nuns raped and murdered by U.S. trained troops, and then the U.S. said, "I think that was actually the Contras that did that."
And you know, I was interested this morning reading some of this, so I looked into the past to discover the sort of media reactions from the same very serious people who are all outraged by Trump, even though he's passed on to hell. I did look up the words Charlie Krauthammer had to say when Pinochet was arrested in England by Scotland Yard in 1998 at the behest of a Spanish judge for his war crimes and tortures and assassinations of journalists and civilians and everything he did. And Charlie was not too happy about it. He thought it was an outrage and hypocritical to boot. So just keep in mind, all of these people, they're all part of the same fucking mafia. And again, why are you so angry about the Trump is just like we said, saying the quiet part loud? Nobody really cares.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like you can't even be mad that it's going to give the game away in any meaningful way because we're past that. I think what it really boils down to, as I said, is they're just worried that they're going to be made obsolete.
Yeah. I mean, I think there are some real earnest virgins out there who are like, you know, this portends horribly if we just openly say what empire is. I guarantee you, I positively guarantee you it makes no difference because most Americans don't even ever think about foreign policy. Ever.
No.
They're
Not
they're
beyond-
thinking about this is us.
Yeah. They think about it in very abstract terms, they just think of vague threats and, of course, the need to support the troops to defend us against those threats. That's really it.
Yeah, if you ask the average American what even is Saudi Arabia, they probably don't know. I mean, most people will give you like a map of the world that a peasant in the Middle Ages would give you.
Yeah.
And it's not that they're stupid, it's that they are actively beaten down into not being able to give a shit about anything. Some people are stupid. Some people are consciously beaten into inaction and apathy.
Well, also,
some people are so concerned about their own lives, and rightfully so, that they can't even fucking look at anything.
Well, right.
else.
It's like you're just at a certain point you have to make cognitive choices to concentrate on things that actually affect your life. Like you can't do anything about any of this. What does knowing about it do other than make you feel worse when you have a life that you actually have to try to live somehow in this fucking hell state that we're in?
If you're like, you know, I'd say like half of Americans who have like kids or something, you are one bad day away from just like a peasant whose entire bloodline got wiped out by getting a cold in the 1300s. It's a rough time out there.
But again, like for all the people that are outraged, you know, press them even the slightest on a moral question about any of the things that they do or any of the people who funds their jobs or make work programs that allow them to keep writing op-eds about supporting American values in the world. Press them even slightly on their complicity in the war in Iraq or any of the other numerous tortures, assassinations, or genocide carried out by U.S. proxies, and watch how quickly they turn into a slightly more articulate version of Donald Trump. Press them on Israel, and it'll happen even faster.
Oh, God, yeah. It's a rough neighborhood.
It's a tough neyborhood. It's a rough neighborhood.
Only democracy in the
Seriously,
region.
They
how
have
many
pride
times?
there.
Yeah,
They have pride in Tel Aviv.
By the way, the Israelis just shot a fucking journalist at the Gaza control line.
An AP journalist
Yes.
who had a press on his flak jacket. They fucking no
600
his
yards
ass.
away.
Well, I mean, you know, that looks like the Hebrew word for mini boss.
No, exactly. Any even like the liberals, the Johns, the Brookings Institutes, press them on what went on morally under the Obama administration. And I'm not saying that like as far as Saudi Arabia and Iran, they did try to do the deal with Iran. They got that done, which is different than the Trump administration. But that required turning a blind eye to numerous atrocities.
That's how they thought
out
of it.
here.
They thought the greater good of the Iran deal necessitated them allowing the Yemen war to happen and to help it.
Maybe they're right. You know?
I mean, it's all because the thing is,
they're not right.
It's
but
necessitated by the unchallenged premises.
Exactly.
And then they act like those are immutable when they're not. And then if they feel bad about it afterwards, like you'll see the Johns, if you press them on any of the stuff, extrajudicial assassinations, like the Alawakis, or Yemen or anything like that. At the most, they will say mistakes were made. And that's how you rationalize it after you do a horrible thing.
Exactly.
Is you just say, I was a goof.
Yeah. And none of them, anyone who gets paid in Washington, D.C. to talk about or write about or investigate any of these things, nobody believes differently than that essentially the American state is good.
Mm-hmm.
It acts in the best interests of the people of the world and its citizens, and it is motivated by concern for human rights and democracy and things like that, and not these narrow, nasty, bloody, grubby things like control of resources and nasty things like
Spheres
that.
of influence,
Exactly. That they would overlook something as horrendous as chainsawing and then dissolving in acid in a U.S. resident. Because
And that's really what it comes down to.
they have in the past, and they will do it again.
The guy had a byline. That's why this matters. That's it. He had a fucking byline. Some of these people knew him personally, and that makes it an entirely different thing than triple tapping a funeral or blowing up a school bus. And or starving 15 million people. It just always will to them. And I mean, to a certain degree, that's unavoidable because circles of empathy, obviously, they get more intense the closer you get. But
And again, we're talking
turning that into your rubric for understanding foreign policy is just baby brain
and
shit.
again, there is some difference between the Democrat and Republican foreign policy elite, but overall, bipartisan consensus mimics exactly all his horseshit about how Iran is the most dangerous country in the world and the most violent exporter of terrorism in the world, when they're literally going to bat for Saudi Arabia, which is that very thing.